The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is September the 1st, 2025. We're there already. And it's Labor Day. Well, I looked up Labor Day being a Brit, and it says the nation's official acknowledgement of work's contribution to national strength, prosperity, and well-being. All the things that we do at Children's Health Defense. It also, and I did not know this, it marks for American the unofficial end of summer. It's the unofficial end of summer, but not here in Texas, I can assure you. Right, well, we've got an exciting show for you today. I'm going to bring on Giorgio Zeolla. Good morning. He is our Chief Advancement Officer at Children's Health Defense. Very posh title there. He does work incredibly hard, Giorgio. Welcome to the show. Good morning.
Thank you, Polly. Good to be here. Good morning, CHD.
Well, so we want to tell our viewers, I want you all to know about something that goes on behind the scenes, if you like, at Children's Health Events. And I'm not sure that you, our viewers, know about it. It's called UpClose events, and they happen once a month. And they are for people that donate $10 a month as a minimum to Children's Health Defense. And of course, as you all know, we all hate asking for money, but we have to survive. And we believe that the job that we do here with CHDTV, the Defender, our amazing science department, our EMR, our legal, goes on and on and on, needs to keep going so we can keep bringing you the truth, giving you the informed consent. Now, Giorgio's job is to make sure that it all stays in place.
Actually, I have the very fun job of talking to the people who make sure that it stays in place, which is our supporters. And the CHD Insider program was conceived of last year. We've had about, I think, 15 events, 15 of those online events. They've taken place in all but I think 2 months since then. And what they are events that we decided to put on for our donors. And it's not just $10 a month. It's donors who give $10 a month or $150 or more in any given calendar year. We thought as a way to say thank you to those folks that we can bring them a little bit closer to some of the issues that we cover inside, hence the name. And it's been a wonderful success. We've had, I think about, like I said, 15 events since we started back in March of 2024. And Ron Johnson has been there. We did an in-depth dive, as you'll remember, Polly, on the measles outbreak recently, where we had Ben Edwards with us. We had Pierre Corey with us, just, really breaking things down, getting into detail, and taking people behind what was reported on CHD TV and, of course, mainstream media, which ignored virtually everything that we had to bring to the table there. So these have been really fun, really successful events that started small. Now, last couple of events, we've had close to 500-600 people registering for these. And what happens is we have sort of a webinar format where someone like Mary Holland or yourself, Polly, will kind of take us through whatever the topic at hand is. And then, of course, people have the chance to ask questions of the speakers. And we never get to all of them, but we do get to many of them. And it's just a really good way for people to try to get some of their questions answered as directly as we possibly can. And it's been a lot of fun to put them on. And Polly, you were there for our last one with Ron Johnson. What was your impression from?
Yeah, it was amazing. So there was Mary, myself, Brian Hooker, and then Ron Johnson. And we were talking about the Senate hearing that we were at. I don't know, was it like a month ago? I can't even remember. Time goes so fast right now. And what's so good about the up close and personal or up close events is they are very personal, and it's like a chit-chatty thing, which is another level. Like the Senate hearing was all very formal. We had to be, read our scripts or, behave nicely. But when it came to this little chat with Ron Johnson, it was so phenomenal that we've been given permission to clip it and show you what an up-close personal event looks like, which is what we're going to do in a few minutes' time. But that will give you all an idea of the kind of events that Giorgio and his amazing team put on. And also, Giorgio, we're really keen to hear from our viewers, our people, what they would like us to discuss, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we try to give the topics that people are engaging with the most on CHD TV and in the Defender. We use that to help guide which topics we want to talk about. But of course, sometimes the topics just bring themselves to us, like the Ron Johnson hearing. There was so much that went into that, so much that came out of it, absolutely exploded on social media. So the idea to bring this one to a broader audience than even just the Up Close was kind of a natural choice. And I think it also makes sense because it helps us get the word out about the Up Close programs. Because, of course, we'd like everybody to support CHD in some way. And if people have the means to give $10 a month or 150 a year, then this is a great way to get access to these and also to become a member of the CHD Insider program, which comes with Up Close membership, obviously, or Up Close access, excuse me, and a whole range of other features that also include other kinds of webinars that we'll hold quarterly. Community forum access, which is something that we started last year, and we wanted to keep going. There's also first access to things like book releases, films, event invitations, and the Insider Dashboard, which is pretty cool because people can now bookmark their favorite Defender stories and CHD TV programs and have this all available through that portal of the an Insider membership. And again, Insider membership comes with anybody who gives $10 or more a month recurring, or that 150 a year.
And I just want to say to those of you that already donate, as Mary and I have talked about before, and Giorgio, I know that you're going to agree with this. When we say, for example, in our legal department, that we had a win, Children's Health Defence had a win. We had the Ray Flores case with HHS. We had that beautiful girl that can now go back to school, all funded by CHD. Really, what we mean is it's all funded by you, the people. We are one big team. You donate to us. We put it to legal or science or wherever it has to go to make things happen, to bring you the truth, which is what we do every day on CHD TV and in the Defender. And behind the scenes are quite a lot of people that our viewers have never met. But, Giorgio, if they come to our conference in November, 7th to 9th, a lot of our staff, pretty much all of our staff will be there. I keep joking with them, Giorgio. They get to meet Lou, the voice behind the CHD TV. Poor Lou. But Giorgio, talk about the conference for a second, because I know you've been very instrumental in being behind this.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I'd love to talk about it. The conferences, this will be the third one that CHD has done since I've been here, and they're incredible. It's the sense of community above all else. Of course, there's all the great speakers that you're going to hear from, and we're adding more. We're working on some names that I think everybody will want to hear from in our community. But as the program grows, it doesn't really change kind of, I think, one of the main draws here, which is this is a chance for you to be in the same space for a few days with close to 1,000 people who are like-minded, and all of us who have been on this journey for medical freedom, or whether we got into it because of something that happened to someone in our family through an injury, or whether it was just COVID and realizing that, hey, there's something going on here, and CHD is one of the only people that was telling the truth and telling it like it is, throughout that whole time, and we were a beacon to many. Well, this is a chance to be in the same space with all of those folks. And as I said earlier, the best part of my job is engaging with the people who support CHD. This is a chance to do it on a scale that I almost never get to do it. It's with close to 1,000 people, and everybody who walks away comments on how great it is to be together with so many like-minded people. It really is the most special thing about our conferences, and that's saying a lot given who some of the speakers are going to be this year and who some of the speakers were before.
Yes, and actually we do have quite a few exciting things happening that will happen there at the conference. So we have a potential announcement. Well, we do have an announcement on the films board, so you'll be hearing about that. Really exciting. You're all going to absolutely love it. And we have other guests that we haven't announced yet that are definitely coming. But what we can talk about is that we have a Vax panel, do we not?
Yeah, and man, are we excited about this one. So, the original Vax film crew and the people that you saw in that film are going to be getting back together for what I like to think of as a victory lap. It's incredible to think about all that's happened since that film came out. And we're going to have the chance to see you, Polly, Brian Hooker, Mary Holland, Del Bigtree, and Andy Wakefield on the stage talking about that film and everything that it's given birth to. I'm really excited about that. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot of really good panels that are coming together. But the idea of revisiting that film and everything that it started, I mean, Bobby Kennedy is the head of the HHS. Who had that on their bingo card back when this film came out?
I mean, no, I mean, it was just, we thought this film would just be a little film that would play at Tribeca Film Festival and that would be it. And then it just blew up. And I have to tell you all that Andy Dell and myself and Brian Hooker have not been on the same stage since the Vaxxed 2016, which is just coming up to 10 years since 10 years ago we were making Vax, and 2016. So yeah, 10 years since we've all been together. It'll be interesting to see where we all are now as well. So
Yeah.
I know Andy's doing great things, Dell's doing great things, obviously Brian Hooker's doing great things, and Mary's going to be there as well with us. So, but that's just a little snippet ahead, but there's more of those kind of things to come. So do sign up. And if, struggling financially, bunker, get in a car with some friends, share a room, have a pajama party. But we just really, really want to see you at the conference. So Giorgio, if there's somebody watching that says, you know what, I have a little bit more than $10 a month and I want to give it to CHD, how do they do that? And they can also, can they not? There's a drop down bar where they can give to legal or science or
Yeah,
CTV.
there are some specific categories that you can pick to direct your gift to. The easiest way to give is to go online and just click the make a gift or make a donation button, and that'll take you to a giving page where you can see all the different options and pick whatever fits best for you. And there are plenty of people who give less than that amount, and no one should feel that their gift isn't enough or that it doesn't, it's not enough to make a difference. Polly, you talked about earlier, sort of, what goes on and who's behind the scenes and how really what we're doing is only possible because the people give. All that stuff is true, but I think it rings truer in our community than it does in others because really, as wonderful as you are, as wonderful as Mary and Dell and everybody that's going to be on that panel, and even Bobby is, we're all just avatars for the people that make this go around. This is a people's movement. This is we have the privilege of doing this job to advance this stuff, but nothing happens without I'm sure millions and millions of people who are behind what we do and who make this possible. So, that is really the driving force here. Any amount is helpful to CHD. And if you can't give, please just stay tuned in. The most important thing is the messaging. It's what we're saying, it's what we're putting out there, and it's building this community that does not shrink. We only get bigger. We only get bigger, and there's only bigger things ahead of us. So anything you could do to be a part of it, whether it's giving, coming to the conference, either or both, we want to see you. We want to meet you. We want to thank you for everything that you're doing because you are the reason everything happens here at CHD.
Well said, Giorgio Zeolla. And thank you, Giorgio, for being the most amazing. Well, you are actually, he's kind of my boss, just so you all know. But thank you, because that whole level of people that run around and make it happen, so I can just go live and do our show here. We're so grateful to you, Giorgio, and it's a really fun organisation to work with. And we know the main thing, we're all fighting for the same thing: saving those babies, saving the future, helping our kids, finding futures for them. So, well, now what we're going to do is we are going to show you an up close. We're going to show you the Ron Johnson one because I could not believe what a phenomenal human being Senator Ron Johnson is. It's this interview will show you all just what a really amazing human being he is. Wouldn't you say, Giorgio?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No spoiler alerts here, but this movement is very lucky to have Ron Johnson where he is. I've had the good fortune to meet him a few times in DC. And I was even shocked at what he said during this up close and how he spoke, his conviction. It's a real inspiration. And I think it's a testimony, again, to bring it back to all of our people. Polly, we know people have been doing this for 30 years, and there's some people who have been doing it for 5 years. And he hears those, he felt all of that. I mean, he's one of us, he knows what needs to be said, and he's committed to getting it out there. And he's in a position to have it be heard in a way that, we are not. And to have him with us really meant the world to us. But I think what it means for the world is even bigger. Yeah, you don't want to miss this. This is a really, really special up close episode with him.
It is. And so because it runs at around 50 minutes, we are not going to be playing Mothers to Be this week. We'll be picking that up again next week. So we're going to go straight now to the UpClose. Tomorrow, Michael Caine will be with you with Meryl Nass, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Giorgio, thank you so much for coming.
Polly. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period. My son's life has been ruined physically and emotionally, and he is persecuted for the mere fact that he exists.
After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations.
Parents deserve the truth. We deserve real informed consent because no parent should have to live the nightmare I do.
I am heartbroken to hear these stories. And it makes me want to do something.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV?
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
I am extremely suspicious, as a lawyer, of immunity that is granted in any blanket way across the board to any manufacturer or to anyone.
So if we're gonna do something, the North Star has gotta be medical freedom. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's gotta be accountability.
No more Pfizer-sponsored science. We need independent science.
I am competing against a pharmaceutical lobby of 1,600 lobbyists. That's 3 lobbyists for each member of Congress. This is insane.
Everybody sitting here, bar 2, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those 2 buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? So this has to stop. And we implore you, please, to follow us at Children's Health Defense. At least break down the truth and get to the truth behind the science of what is really happening.
I'd love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better, Senator Johnson. You are a hero to the people who follow Children's Health Defense. And so I wanted to ask you, you made this bold statement that vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored. What brought you to this? It's not an easy cause to adopt. We know that. What led you to decide that this was something you were going to fight for as a senator?
Well, it really was COVID. And, the hearings I held when I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, because nobody else, the Health Committee wasn't doing this. No other committee in Congress was talking about early treatment. Nobody was really taking a look at really what is the case fatality rate, the infection fatality rate of COVID. I mean, everybody's freaking out about this thing. Everybody was totally on board with the COVID injection as the only solution to end the pandemic. I kept pushing early treatment. I wanted our federal health agencies to spend the type of effort they did on warp speed. How about a warp speed on actually treating these diseases? And particularly after I came in contact with Michael Yeadon, who, 30-year vice president of Pfizer, ended up vice president of research. His background's in toxicology, and he just laid out, literally how insane that mRNA platform was for this type of pandemic. And so, I was wary of it. There was no way I was ever going to get that injection. Then I started watching the VAERS reports. And, this is something that the CDC had been touting back in September, October, prior to the rollout of the vaccines, that they were going to be watching and surveilling the safety signals just like a hawk. If you miss a day or 2 at work and that's reported to VAERS, they're going to have a CDC representative calling you up and finding out exactly what happened. I mean, that was all complete BS. And so that opened up my eyes. I was then contacted by people who were, and I refuse to call it a vaccine, the COVID injection, injured. And that connected me with the vaccine injured community as well. And so, listen, I think it's obvious vaccine injuries are real. They acknowledged that when they passed the 1986 bill that vaccine injury is unavoidable. But society is just taking a look at that as collateral damage. And narrative in the mainstream media is just so overwhelming and so powerful, as is the belief in, the wanting to believe in a simple shot can prevent death and disease. I mean, who would want to believe in that? And so they push that with religious like zeal and completely ignore the harms being caused. That's just the collateral damage for the greater good of society. And once you see it, just like Bobby Kennedy, once that mom went up to his doorstep with all the science and said, "I'm not leaving until you read it," and he read it and he opened up his eyes. You can't close your eyes. You just simply can't. I thought the most noteworthy thing about the hearing was the heartbreaking testimony by people like Emily and Brian and Polly and the others. But what was actually quite noteworthy is the legacy media chose to basically ignore it.
Right.
We had MSNBC write a hit piece, but they had written that before the hearing. I got the questions beforehand. I didn't respond to it. I just encouraged the reporter to show up. Apparently she did, but a complete hit piece, that was it. Otherwise, radio silence. They can't refute it, but they can ignore it, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
Have you paid a price for trying to get to the bottom of this and to reveal some of the truth around what happened during COVID and with vaccines in general?
Well, listen, the legacy media portrays me as a whack job. They completely marginalized me, and that really hit home when I read Brianne Dressen's book. They were the COVID injection injured. They were looking for some advocate in Congress, and one of their members, Ken Rutgers, used to be a linebacker or a lineman for the Green Bay Packers, reached out. I would talk to him. When he reported back that it was Senator Ron Johnson, literally the group said, "Not him." I mean, that's the only person that is willing to listen to us? Again, I've been so ridiculed, so vilified, so marginalized in the mainstream media, but that's what they do, right? They do that, then they can label you discredited. Anytime you hold a hearing, anytime you bring the truth forward, they don't have to deal with the truth. They just have already destroyed the messenger, and they can just slough off the truth by saying, "Well, that guy's discredited. Don't listen to anything he says."
That's the mainstream media, and we at Children's Health Defense have a long history with mainstream media. What about your constituents? What's been their response to the briefings that you held before you were the chairman and now the hearings that you're hearing?
Well, first of all, I would not have run for a third term had other people stepped up to the plate and advocated for the vaccine injured, but nobody else was. And I couldn't turn my back on this country. We're in serious problems, but I certainly could not turn my back on the COVID injection and the vaccine injured. So I ran for a third term. I honestly think I won by 26 or 27,000 votes, a narrow election. Wisconsin, we're a very purple state. I honestly believe that my genuine advocacy. I think people on both sides of the aisle recognize that. So I probably had a number of Democrats vote for me and probably put me over the top. So I don't think it didn't hurt me politically. I don't believe at all.
What about other members of the Senate? What's been their response to your advocacy around this? What do they tell you both publicly, but also what do they tell you privately? I'm interested, if you can tell us.
It's very disappointing. I encourage the COVID injection injured to go actually sit down with their senators, with their House members, not just staff, and they all came to Capitol Hill, and they were in many cases treated horrifically. I felt bad. So the problem you have, basic human tendency is nobody wants to admit they're wrong. So listen, I supported Operation Warp Speed. I wanted the pandemic to be over. I supported early treatment. Anything that would work, cure people, don't let people die, end this pandemic. So I supported Operation Warp Speed. When I found out about the mRNA injection, no way. And so I kept my eyes open in terms of the safety signals, and so I was very wary of that. But most of my colleagues, they did videos encouraging their constituents to take this, just like doctors encourage their patients to take it. Our federal health officials, President of the United States, President Biden mandated it. So again, nobody who pushed this, who suggested it, who mandated it, they don't want to admit that something they recommended might have killed one of their constituents or permanently disabled them. It's the same thing with the childhood vaccine schedule. This has just been, it's pushed with religious zeal. Nobody even wants to consider that they're not completely safe and effective. Nobody wants to even consider that. So again, they just ignore it.
Yeah. So one of the things in the hearing that was really notable and was picked up in that clip is that you suggested to Senator Blumenthal that there should be a ban on pharmaceutical advertising, and he said he would co-sponsor that. Has anything happened in follow-up to that?
Well, first of all, there are a couple of bills. Bernie Sanders' bill has one. Chuck Grassley. They come at it from different perspectives. Again, I don't want to ascribe certain motives to my colleagues, but my guess is Democrats primarily want to ban pharmaceutical advertising because they falsely believe that'll bring drug prices down. Advertising is not what drives drug prices up. Maybe fractionally, but nothing significant. I would want to do it just from a standpoint of the fact that the advertising is what allows Big Pharma to buy the narrative. Right. And we saw them effectively buy the narrative during COVID, and now they're certainly buying the narrative in just as it relates to the childhood schedule. I thought it was notable this morning in the New York Times. They had a guest columnist quoting some other supposedly expert who I've reached out to Toby Rogers. He's given me all the conflicts of interest of this person, but they just declare that all the misinformation that vaccines have caused autism, that's been widely debunked. Ever since the English paper's been again, they just spew all this stuff. None of it can really withstand scrutiny, but it is never scrutinized because the legacy media, they're all on board. They're bought and paid for by Big Pharma. So again, that's why I'd want to ban. I'm a free market guy. I believe in free speech. Companies want to spend their money on stupid ads that really don't push their products, but they're buying the narrative, and that's where the problem is with that.
For sure. Senator Moreno made a statement that medical freedom is the North Star and that we have to unpack COVID, right? That there were massive violations of fundamental rights. Is he somebody that you expect to move this forward? Is he somebody that it seems like a promising colleague to bring light to this whole issue?
Well, I certainly appreciate he attended the hearing. We had other members maybe just checked in, which is not unusual. They have competing hearings, that type of thing. You can't necessarily fault somebody for that. But no, he showed up and I thought he asked some good questions, made some good points. Obviously, this should be all about medical freedom. This should be about informed consent, right, which means you need science uncorrupted, because right now it's highly corrupted. When you pay for science, you get the result you want. That's what we've seen. A federal health agency has been captured. So it starts, medical freedom starts with returning integrity to science, integrity to our federal health agencies, who should be the watchdog, and then making sure that high integrity, uncorrupted science gets disseminated, that it isn't held close to the vest by just a few people, that the American public actually have the information so they can have informed consent, which right now we don't have.
Right. Are you planning to do more hearings in this space, Senator Johnson? Oh yeah, no, I'm just laying the foundation. We have a hearing planned for September 9th. Can't talk a whole lot about it, but it's again, as I've been talking about here, the first step is we have to return integrity to science. Right. It's been corrupted literally for decades. Right. And so my hearings have been laying out the corruption of the science, corruption of the federal health agencies. The first hearing was talking about, because we were able to uncover documents, how the CDC knew that myocarditis was a safety signal, and they hid it, they buried it, they kept it from people, they kept it from the public. The second hearing was Voices Vaccine Injured. I thought it was about time that not only did we let the COVID injection injured have their say, have a platform, but it's time to bring people like yourself. I mean, you didn't testify, but you could have. But Polly and Brian, the others, it was time to give them a voice, and we did that. This next one's going to be talking about, again, other science that has been hidden.
that tells the truth. And Brian is well aware of this. But again, we need to unveil this at the proper time.
Yep.
But again, I think it'll be a very impactful hearing. We're going to have Aaron Series speak, he's not a doctor, but I don't know very many people's knowledgeable about exactly the business of and the science behind, or the lack of science behind, vaccines. Then we also have Toby Rogers, who also just a phenomenal researcher who's really delved into this and just can refute anything the other side throws at him.
Well, that's great news. I'm thrilled to hear that they will be at a hearing that you're going to hold in September. So I want to welcome now my colleagues, Brian Hooker and Polly Tommey. And although they both work at Children's Health Defense, they testified as citizens and as parents, as a mom and a dad, talking on behalf of their children and sharing kind of the personal side of vaccine injury. So Polly, let me start with you. What was it like for you to testify at that hearing?
Well, it was a phenomenal moment for, I just want to say that, for Brian, myself, Emily, and Crystal, we were fully aware when we sat down in those seats that we were not just representing our children, we were representing the countless, not just in America, even around the world, that were relying on us to speak up for their children, because we never had this moment, ever. I've been doing this for just under 30 years, and nobody has ever taken us seriously, as you know. And, we try and even go out on social media and warn other parents, because that's fundamentally what we're trying to do, warn other parents not to have this ghastly thing happen to you that destroys your life. I mean, we've made good of it. We all have. But for that moment, the moment we all sat down and did that, we prayed like mad, and we got in there and we spoke on behalf of everyone. So Senator Ron Johnson, Mary's right. You are a hero for all, not just American people around the world. They were contacting us, thanking you for giving us a chance to talk about what happened to our children. So thank you.
Brian,
Well, you're kind to say that.
Brian, how about you? What did it mean to you to be able to testify at that hearing?
I personally fought for this type of hearing starting, back in 2004, 2005. And it never happened. We were allowed to talk about science. We were allowed to talk, make recommendations of perhaps some hearings that did happen. But we have never been able to really just share the personal stories, and especially Crystal Cordingley, whose son Corbin passed away just mere hours after getting the quadrivalent flu shot. I mean, to be able to sort of step into that world and step into that life. And as Polly said, we knew that just us 4 or 5 speaking was the tip of the iceberg, that there were so many people that had suffered these injuries that we had talked to over the years. And so it was a seminal moment just to be able to share our stories.
So I want to ask another question, Polly and Brian. So Polly, you were in the UK when Billy was born, but Brian, you were here in the US. And my understanding is that both of you were following what your doctors advised. You weren't doing anything different. You were just following what they told you to do, but it was based on deception from the pharmaceutical industry. So obviously that must be very painful, but what do you see as the next steps, Polly? What are the next steps that you want to see happen?
Well, again, because I've spoken to thousands and thousands of parents and recorded their stories, I can tell you on behalf of them, the first place we go with our precious gifts, our babies, is to a pediatrician. And for a pediatrician to be paid or get incentives to vaccinate our children, this has to stop, because with that comes the bullying and lies as well, that our children won't get cancer if they take the HPV shot. They'll never get measles if they take the MMR shot. All of these things are untrue. Never were we told at any point your child could have a seizure, all of that being in the insert. So from my point of view, and again, on behalf of these parents, please, I implore you, we have to get rid of these pediatricians. It's a massive conflict of interest for them to be paid, getting incentives for the more they vaccinate, which puts the pressure on the parents. So from my point of view, that has to go, because even now the HHS is saying to us and the CDC, Go to your healthcare provider, which is what? Our pediatrician with our babies, and discuss it with them. Well, they're not going to tell you not to vaccinate because they want their bonus. So that's not good advice at the moment. So again, it comes from passion because I don't want parents to ever have to go through what we've been through. So please, that's for me the biggest thing. No more pediatricians getting incentives to vaccinate our children.
Brian, how about you?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting, as soon as that came out in the hearing, and Senator Johnson, you asked a specific question, and Polly and I were able to, answer that. And I had some facts and figures. But almost as soon as it came out, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is essentially a pediatricians trade organization, came out and tried to refute that. I mean, but we have the pamphlets, we have the brochures from the HMOs that show the incentivization programs that show very, very clearly that they are incentivized to have a certain portion of their practices fully vaccinated. The other thing I'd love to see is that the entire vaccination schedule becomes shared decision making between the pediatricians and the parents, rather than any type of recommendations or any type of requirements. I mean, so many of those become binding under state statutes. And, I live in California. It's very, very difficult to opt out of the vaccination schedule as recommended by the California Department of Public Health. And so the more that becomes shared decision making, the more that the power gets back into the hands of the parents. And then finally, the government has to clean up this mess. Vaccine injury is an epidemic in the United States. These people need to be taken care of. They need to be compensated. I don't really have an exit plan for what happens to my son when my wife and I are gone. I mean, these are the decisions and the things that we grapple with every day. But they have not been taken care of. The government made the mess. The pharmaceutical industry made the mess. It's time to clean up the mess.
Senator Johnson, do you want to comment on that?
Well, the first step in terms of compensation, just getting a handle over what that is going to cost society, we need the numbers. So you hear the 1 in 10,000 from 1970 to 1 in 150 to all the way down to whatever it is now, 1 in 31, California 1 in 20.
Right.
Okay, what does that mean? What percentage of those children are in a position that like your son is, Brian, that simply cannot take care of themselves. And again, right now, because we're in the early stages of this epidemic, most parents are taking care of their autistic children in the home. When those parents are no longer there, this is going to create an explosion in costs, already $37 trillion in debt. So we need to get a handle on this. What is the extent of the problem? I mean, how many of these children are there? What is the range in disability? We do it on Alzheimer's, we do it on a bunch of other diseases. We don't do it on this because we don't want to know. Just like I held that event on nutrition, and the kind of the MAHA movement, and Dr. Chris Palmer does a lot of work. He's a psychiatrist, nutrition of the brain, said they don't want to know the root cause of chronic illness. They don't want to know the root cause of autism, because if you find out, it's going to disrupt the multi-billion-dollar business models of who knows what industries, and it's going to put society on the hook for doing something about it.
Well, the good news is that Secretary Kennedy is going to be coming out next month in September with at least the beginnings of what's caused the autism epidemic. So I don't think that the situation is going to be endlessly static. I'm at least very hopeful. So I'm looking at questions and answers that are coming in from our audience. If you haven't yet put any questions into the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen and you'd like to, please do. We won't get to all of them, but I will do my best to get to as many as possible. And please be concise in your question. So I have a question for you, Senator Johnson. The question is, Senator Blumenthal expressed concern about the government issuing broad liability protection to any industry, but certainly to the pharmaceutical industry. And we know from that 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, that there's virtually blanket liability protection to the pharmaceutical industry and the medical complex. What is your view on protection from liability for corporations in general?
So I understand why it was granted to pharmaceutical companies. We were at risk of not having any vaccine manufacturers. I understand that. I think Senator Blumenthal, I think the Democrat Party in general, we would consider them pretty much in the back pockets of the trial lawyers. So trial lawyers would love, unlimited liability. Okay, I think there'd have to be some kind of limits put on it, but it should not be, there should not be that unlimited liability protection. It's just caused this explosion in the number of vaccines without rigorous science being performed on it. So I'd be totally supportive of that. I do have to say, I was told that Senator Blumenthal before the hearing, now as a ranking member, not the chairman, he literally held a press conference and encouraged people not to watch the hearing. So he might, again, the testimony was so powerful that he had to say these things. I mean, you can't sit there and listen to that testimony, not show that you have empathy for the witnesses, right? But then you have to take a look at what's actually happening. He's asked Bobby Kennedy to fire Robert Malone.
Right.
Okay, he's again, literally as ranking member of committee. I can't imagine doing that as a ranking member. I'll go to the hearing. I'll complain about how I think it's inappropriate or whatever, but I would never hold a press conference ahead of time and encourage people not to watch. In other words, don't watch the truth. Don't watch this testimony that'll break your heart because you just might have sympathy. It just might open up your eyes. So close your eyes, close your minds. And that's really what Richard Blumenthal thought about that hearing. No matter what he said during the hearing, that's what he thought about it.
Wow. One more question for you, Senator Johnson, but I'd love to get Brian and Polly's view of this too. Many people feel there needs to be some kind of COVID truth inquiry, a truth and reconciliation commission of some kind, whether in the Senate or elsewhere. What do you think of that idea? And if you support it, what can people do to make some kind of reckoning happen around COVID? It literally turned the world upside down. And yet, as you say, people in Congress, people in corporations, people especially who invested themselves in the COVID measures don't really want to talk about it.
Well, I absolutely think it's imperative to do it. It's why I had my COVID-19 second opinion and another one after that, why I held hearings on the COVID injection injured and the vaccine injured. We need a reckoning of this. We all have to recognize what powerful forces we're up against, but I am absolutely 100% for a reckoning, understanding exactly what happened, but that's what I've been trying to do. It's what I'm going to continue to try and do. But as I said, this last hearing, the reaction from the legacy media, from my colleagues and everybody else is basically ignore it and it'll go away. We're not going away.
No, we're not going away. Polly, you could speak to this first, having led the Vax 3 bus. So listen to this because I think it raises a number of issues. In my family alone, I lost my mom after her second COVID shot, lost 2 fully COVID vaccinated cousins treated with remdesivir and ventilators, and 2 fully vaxxed family members had strokes. Coincidence? Those of us taking ivermectin, no problems, no COVID.
Yeah, well, when we were on the bus, we were shocked not just to see how many people, parents and people coming to talk to us about the injury and death from the COVID shot, but what we were totally unprepared for was the hospital COVID protocols. We had no idea about that, and they still have no voice, these people. And as you know, if you watch Vax 3, you'll see that it was just ongoing at every stop, lines and lines of people holding up placards of their loved ones that had been killed, in their words, in hospitals with the hospital protocol. At some point, we have to address that as well, because those numbers are as much as the COVID shot deaths. And the weird thing, that's the thread going through, is that the unvaccinated were not treated the same as the vaccinated. And that's not coming from me. That is 100% coming from the people of America. Someone's got to look into that at some point.
Brian, do you want to speak to the hospital protocols at all and what happened during COVID?
Well, one of the things that I want to kind of back up to was the whole notion of having an inquiry, I think, is way, way overdue. People have to realize the type of gain of function research that was done at the Wuhan laboratory that caused this cataclysm is going on at our CDC, at the NIH, at BARDA, at universities across the United States. Gain of function research hasn't been banned. It's still going on. And so, this becomes incumbent on us to be able to act so quickly, because, this type of work, this type of research with viruses is essentially weaponizing viruses in order to make them more transmissible and then also more virulent to humans. And so, the whole notion of an inquiry is beyond overdue. Also, not to mention, what Polly found out and what I saw on a limited degree. I was on the Vax bus for a while on these hospital protocols where essentially they were also targeting the unvaccinated for, more aggressive treatment, more remdesivir that caused organ damage, and more ventilation, mechanical ventilation, putting people in ICU on intubation, and we would hear the story over and over again. These essentially were death protocols.
Senator Johnson, you had briefings last year that touched on these issues. I know you invited Dr. Corey to talk about ivermectin in particular. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I'm very well aware, because the advocacy I've had on these issues. I mean, nurses used to call it "run, death is near" on remdesivir. Yeah, again, yes, we need a truth commission on this.
We do.
That's what the House subcommittee on coronavirus should have done.
Right.
Okay, I've said after I watched the first hearing of that, the only thing that was missing was a banner that said, "You're brought to you by Pfizer." So again, there's such a resistance within Congress, within the federal health agencies, within the media. It's very difficult. So, I mean, I'd love to see it. Is it going to be supported in Congress? Probably not. If it's not, where else are you going to do it? So, I'll be the lone voice in Congress pushing this, and it's going to take groups like yours and other people. I mean, the good news now is, the mainstream media has been marginalized to a great extent. We have the alternate media. We've got podcasts. We've got some courageous doctors who are out there and talking about these things. So the public's aware. I mean, the fact that we're breaking through, or the fact that there's such a low uptake of booster shots, even though they continue to be, recommended and pushed on people, the American people aren't buying it, partly because of what we've done to communicate. But I think the basic reality is you were talking about somebody on that bus. Everybody in America knows somebody who's injured by the COVID injection. Everybody. I mean, I think Rasmussen had a poll, like 25% of Americans think they know somebody who died from the shot. And of the 38,000 plus worldwide deaths, 24% of those occurred on either the day of vaccination or within 1 or 2 days. Okay, Vegas doesn't prove causation, but man, that's correlation that opens my eyes. But also a correlation that was censored. When I would bring my charts on to shows, those radio talk show hosts, for example, would be deplatformed on Facebook. So again, we're up against powerful interests.
Absolutely. So, Senator Johnson, you're aware of the doctors and nurses that lost their license when they spoke out about the deaths or about using ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. And you've given them a platform. Is that something that you see some kind of reckoning happening on? What do you see next for those physicians who courageously stood up to the false narrative?
Well, there have been so few of them that they've actually been in pretty good demand. They've kind of landed on their feet in many cases. Okay, yeah. They get criticized for it. I mean, people got to make a living, right?
Right.
I think what's noteworthy is there weren't that many, because it doesn't take very many. Right? If you're a brutal dictatorship, you don't have to, hang very many people in the public square for small little offenses before everybody kind of toes the line. And that's what happened. I mean, these doctors who had the courage, compassion to treat COVID, whether it's with hydroxychloroquine and zinc and ivermectin, budesonide, all the generic drugs that were working, They were brought before the licensing boards. They were fired. They were sued. Again, their lives, their careers were destroyed. Now, a lot of them, thank God, have landed on their feet. Not all.
Yeah.
The ones that have been given from the platforms, they're doctors who've been destroyed by this, and they're not being compensated. I feel horrible. I wish I could, make them all whole. But I'll say it. I will say it again. We are up against powerful interests.
Right. Polly and Brian, you both have spoken with many of these healthcare practitioners who suffered a lot during COVID and for what they stood up for. Do you want to say anything, Polly, about that?
Well, yeah, we've spoken to a lot of medical professionals about this, and but here's the thing: they're so brave, just like Senator Ron Johnson. And I'm sorry you're on your own out there. I hope reinforcements arrive to help you with the mammoth job that you have. But with these medical professionals, they know that they have to do the right thing. They know what they're saying, and so for them, they are in a much more powerful place right now. They're coming on CHD TV. They go on all of these big platforms. They're writing books. They're okay. And so to doctors out there listening and they want to come forward, it's a much better place to come forward than it is to sit back in the darkness with all that guilt.
Brian, you interview a lot of doctors and scientists who spoke out during COVID.
Well, so many of them were marginalized for speaking out, and I couldn't agree more with Polly. I see so many of these brave individuals who have continued to speak out that are creating alternative platforms where, for instance, with the scientists and the medical researchers, the MDs that do medical research, we're creating alternative systems where we can get our publications actually published without censorship from big pharma. And then some of the stories that we heard were just absolutely hair-raising. Nurses who were seeing these death protocols before their eyes, but they would help participate in the medical kidnapping so these individuals could be taken out of these sort of death protocols in these hospitals by their families and basically save their lives. I mean, these are individuals that need our care. They need our encouragement, and they need to be lauded for what they did. And again, what Polly said, continue to speak out. The ones that are speaking out, that have a platform, the public opinion is changing regarding COVID and even the entire childhood vaccination schedule now.
So, and here's another interesting question. What do all of you think about the fact that the American Academy of Pediatrics today announced their own vaccine schedule, including COVID-19 vaccines for infants 6 months and up, in conflict to the latest Centers for Disease Control recommendations? Senator Johnson, are you familiar with this?
Listen, I think those medical groups are just corrupt organizations. I would ignore them.
Polly?
Well, yeah, and follow the money as well on AAP, for sure, follow the money. The sad thing about it is, yes, we do ignore them, although I would love us to take them down, because the young parent, again, is going to listen to, whatever news station they listen to where the AAP are speaking. The American Academy of Pediatrics sounds so important. And that was the person I used to be. So how do we get to these poor young parents who are being brainwashed by the bought media and all the other bought industries that surrounding them? Again, I go back to, they start at the pediatrician, it needs to end at the pediatrician. Please.
But as Ron Johnson said, the mainstream media has lost so much power. I mean, that's the good news, is that those parents may not be listening to NBC or CBS or MSNBC anymore.
Well, our movement's definitely not, but I worry about those young.
No, I hear you.
Don't know any better.
Brian, what about you? The announcement today by the AAP.
Well, it's really funny, the AAP, they show up with their white coats to testify for these pro-pharma bills and, act as they're pure as the driven snow. But this is an industry trade organization. The purpose of the industry trade organization is to make money for their industry. And they're underwritten by Pfizer, Moderna, CSL Seqirus, Sanofi Pasteur, all of these vaccine manufacturers, and it's basically this sort of behemoth mouthpiece of all of them, all of the evil combined of all these serial felon organizations, just wrapped up in one voice. And so, you need to really, really consider the source. And the more that we can shine the light on what that organization really is, the better we are.
So in Congress right now, Senator Johnson, Congressman Tom Massey has introduced a bill to repeal the PrEP Act, the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act of 2005, that granted these expansive liability protections to the industry, to the medical profession, and to the government during a declared emergency or pandemic. What's your thought about the possibility of a companion Senate bill to that effect?
Well, first of all, I'd vote for it. Let's be honest, it doesn't stand a vast chance.
Yeah.
So again, it's good to,
Yeah.
a lot of bills are introduced, very few are actually passed. I'm focusing all my attention on informing the public. Just continue, and again, that's one method of informing the public. But before we can even hope to pass that kind of legislation, the public has to be totally behind us, and we are a long way from that.
Yeah. Polly, do you have any questions for Senator Johnson?
Well, yes, I do actually. So for people listening and really want to get involved and join this fight and do everything they can, what would you recommend they do? What is the best thing to make a massive difference?
Talk to people, be informed. It's all about information.
Yes.
It's all about opening your eyes. And then once your eyes have been opened, use your open eyes to spread the word. It's just that. Understanding, again, I hate to be a broken record here, understanding what we are up against. I just saw Bill Cassidy wrote a column for the Washington Examiner talking about what a travesty it is on the mRNA pause or defunding the Bobby Kennedy introduced. Wall Street Journal has a lead op-ed about the same thing, saying what a mistake that is, how dangerous it is for Bobby Kennedy to do that. Now, from my standpoint, again, I'm not a doctor, not a medical researcher. mRNA technology may have its place, but it didn't take more than about a 5-minute description from Michael Yeadon for me to decide there's no way I'm ever going to inject that in my body, and I'm going to recommend to anybody who will listen to me, don't do it. Find a doctor who will prescribe you ivermectin or hydroxy or whatever. Treat it. Don't rely on that injection. So. I wanted too much. Don't even know what the question was.
No, all good.
I'm not sure I answered it or not.
No, you did. Build awareness that's the bedrock.
Right.
That's what we have to do.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
So, Senator Johnson, you're a massive inspiration because you are out there on your own doing this. And so what are you ever afraid? Because I think fear drives a lot of all of our mistakes that we make when we vaccinate our children and everything else. So do you have anything to say on fear? Because I feel like you have none. You're out there doing it. Are you ever afraid?
No, I don't know what I'd be afraid of. Again, I know who I am. Listen, nobody likes to be ridiculed. Nobody likes to be, vilified, but I know who I am. So I'm pretty grounded. And listen, people call me hero. I'm not. I mean, the heroes are those nurses who took somebody's loved one and shoved them out the back of the hospital so they could live rather than having remdesivir injected in their veins or get hooked up to a ventilator. Those are the heroes of COVID. And those doctors who stepped forward had their careers destroyed. Listen, that's not an easy thing to do. Like I said, probably helped me get reelected. So I haven't paid any price for this. I really haven't. So no, I don't have any fear. And I did when. I appreciate the kind words, but I kind of wince because I'm just doing what anybody that has their eyes open ought to do, like Bobby Kennedy did, like you're doing.
Brian, how about you? Do you have any questions for Senator Johnson? And then Senator Johnson, you'll have an opportunity to ask us questions, but Brian's next.
Well, I can't thank you enough for just exposing the truth and your commitment to exposing the truth. Now, there's one of you. And there are 534 other members of Congress. How come there aren't more of you, more people like you in those congressional seats, in the Senate, in the House?
I think as relates to vaccines, the narrative is that powerful. Listen, I don't doubt Senator Cassidy's sincerity. He's a doctor.
Right.
He completely believes in the childhood vaccine schedule. I mean, that's his belief. I guess I'm not constrained by that narrative. I've had my eyes opened up. So, but most members are. And again, as I said in my opening statement, I understand the appeal of a vaccine. God, maybe some of them do work. I don't know. I mean, I think the science has been so corrupted. I just really don't know. But I'd love to think that there was a shot that you could give that doesn't screw up your immune system, do greater harm to your immune system than it does in terms of preventing a disease. But one of the things I was most ridiculed about during COVID, one statement I made is I said, why would mankind think it could do better than what God has done with our God-given immune system? Right. They trotted out a Catholic priest to vilify me. But the more I learn, not being a doctor, the marvel of the human body, the marvel of the immune system, and the fact that doctors, trained medical professionals, can't understand or at least question the fact, when you screw with that, when you find out after the third injection of the COVID injection that you're producing more IgG4, which actually suppresses your immune system, again, when you're loading up a little infant with how many different antigens at the same time, could there possibly be harm being caused right there when you are messing with God's marvelous creation? Okay, have a little modesty, have a little humility. Okay, so again, I digress and I vent, I guess. Sorry.
No. We're happy to hear you. Do you have any questions for us?
I do. I remember, Brian, when you submitted your first testimony to me, it was very scientific. And I came back to you and said, hey, this is great, but, talk about that in the hearing. Dr. Hooker, I want to hear your story. And then you wrote up your testimony, and it was hard to read. How hard is it for you guys? I mean, I'm getting emotional right now. How hard is it for you to tell these stories? And I felt bad. Not like I'm using you, but I felt bad forcing you. Crystal, I mean, you saw there's a reason we put Crystal at the very end. Yeah. Because in my staff interview with her, she was going to have a tough time. I forced you to go through that very tough thing. How tough is it for you?
Well, just to jump in really quick, one of the toughest things is to see your child in pain. And my child is an adult now. My son is 27 years old and still has to deal with chronic pain. And, fortunately, he can now communicate that pain. He is a non-speaker. He can't speak. He spells. But there is nothing more excruciating than having a child in chronic pain and not knowing how to make it stop.
Yeah, I just want to add to that as well. It is painful, but it's also, there's something about it that makes you feel like you're doing something to put right what was so wrong. And I have friends who their adult children like Billy have so many seizures a day. They don't even know if their child is going to get through the day. I mean, there's always someone worse off in you. And some of these, this is the thing that is very hard for us to hear, is the mainstream will say, well, autism is a gift. But what we're seeing is it's not that high functioning Asperger's. Our children are going to go out and work. Our children will never live independently. Brian and my children, adult children, will never do that. And there are people who, as I say, and it's not just who's going to look after them when we're not around. We're getting older and weaker, and they're getting bigger and stronger. So that's the other issue we've got. And so we do this on behalf of our children, but on behalf of all of those out there that need us to do it for them. And we need it to stop for the next generation. We're killing our own people. That's what we're doing. We're eating our own. And that's the saddest. Billy could have been someone really amazing in life. He is lovely. We love our Billy. But he could have been anything he wanted to be. We took that away from him. We've taken away the lives of Americans, of people around the world, through a vaccine. This has to stop. It has to. We're killing them.
So what I certainly wanted in the hearing, I wanted that burden on the parent and family exposed. Because again, when you look at an autistic child, your heart goes out for the autistic child. My heart goes out to both, and maybe even as a parent myself. I mean, we all have hopes and dreams for our children, and I mean, I hate even talking about it in front of you, but what not having those hopes and dreams, or understanding, and then knowing that we're all mortal. What happens to that child when you're gone? You can't give them the love and care that you've been able to. So again, it's a horrible burden, and to me, that if something drives me, it is the outrage of the people pushing this narrative that, oh, nothing to see here, let's just ignore it. How can you be a decent human being and ignore that type of suffering of a child, that type of suffering, that kind of burden of these families? That's why you can't turn your back on this.
Well, we're so grateful to you for not turning your back, Senator Johnson, and we would be delighted to have more like you, but we're so delighted that you have stood your ground and have been really a beacon for the community that is vaccine injured. So we're so grateful to you, and grateful for all of the people who tuned in tonight. Brian, Polly, thank you for sharing so much, because it is painful to share one's these wounds. These are real wounds that your family and your children have suffered. But thank you all for coming. The supporters who are watching tonight, you make our work possible. We're especially grateful for people who joined this new insider program that will give us sustained support that we're so grateful to have. Please consider, if you haven't, joining us in Austin, November 7th to 9th for our next national conference. It's going to be a great event. Again, thank you all for taking the time to be with us tonight. I hope you'll join us again next month for the next Up Close. Thanks so much.
Okay, we are live. Can you tell us your name?
Hey, my name is Misty Denson.
And what do you do, Misty?
Well, I'm a nurse. I was a nurse. I guess I am still a nurse, but I don't practice.
And that's why you're here today.
That's right. Yeah, I was fired for not taking the vaccine.
Okay. So prior to COVID, did you take your yearly flu vaccine and all those things, or were you already kind of?
I was not one of the ones that would go on a routine basis to the flu vaccine, but I would every once in a while, I guess, just because everybody else did. But I wasn't gung-ho on that one either.
Were any of your employers requiring that?
The flu vaccine? Mm-hmm. They were pressing it, but they did not mandate the flu vaccine.
Okay. And so COVID hits, all the crazies start happening. Can you kind of walk us through your experience of what happened?
Sure. So COVID hits and everyone is like kind of running to the hills, kind of crazy like, and what are we to do? But we know as nurses we're still going to show up for work. And so even though people were scared to death and they were staying at home and they don't know what the virus is, we still showed up for work. We were in our mask, we were in everything we could think of to do to make ourselves better and our patients better. So we still showed up every day. We did what we needed to do. We were in the faces of our patients, and we were the frontline people. And so then the deadline comes and they say that we have to do the vaccine. And well, of course I knew that was just something that I just had a very strong ingrained feeling that it wasn't something that I needed to be a part of. I did pray about it and I was like, I'm not getting the feeling that I'm led to do this, that this is something that I need to do. And so I filled out my papers, and not only did I fill out my papers, religious exemption, I did medical exemption too, because I've also had the COVID virus. So my body's already processed and made antibodies. And so I took a picture of my test, my positive antibody test, and I submitted it also in my medical exemption. And all of those were denied.
Was it a religious exemption?
Yeah.
Okay. A religious exemption. So was it like a formal process? Do you think someone even looked at your exemption?
Not really. I think they just crossed them out all across the board.
And were you seeing any kind of coercion or incentives?
Yeah, actually there were interdepartmental memos that came out, and they were talking of we actually had a goal meter that was in our break room, and it was kind of like the thermometer, and it kind of went red. They drew it in, how many percents were vaccinated, and then the white was remaining holdouts. And then there was a memo that came out that talked about there were 130 employees that said that they wouldn't get vaccinated. So then the next line said, so those that are vaccinated need to persuade those who aren't. And then the next piece of paper on the stapled memo talked about different phases of people would get, if you were vaccinated, you could possibly get a $5,000 money bonus, and then if you were vaccinated and you went through the process, you would get like $200 on your pay stubs. And then shortly after that, it was Dr. Dobbs, the medical officer, and the CEO at Methodist were kind of like doing a bingo game, kind of who was going to be the big winner of the $5,000 deal.
As a nurse, in your career, have you ever seen that level of coercion for any medical treatment?
Never. It was intense. It was brutal. It was. I had such a fond happiness for being a nurse and providing for my patients, and so that was something that was. They went after that, and that wasn't. I've always been a nurse. I've always done by the rules. It was this. This is where the line was drawn. Yeah.
So, were you formally terminated, or walk us through, your last day of work?
So my last day of work was December the 3rd. December the 6th, I get a piece of paper because I had not submitted my my vaccination form, that I was fired and that I should call Human Resources for protocol, what would come after that.
And so, have you started searching for new jobs, or what was your whole outlook after that?
Well, I did at the very beginning. I did think that I was going to go back to nursing, but then there was just such I couldn't find my fit. I couldn't, and I don't know if it was just because the Lord was telling me this is not for you right now or whatever. But I tried several interviews and kind of did some shadowing, and nothing was what I was expecting, or it didn't feel right. But now I'm cleaning houses. So I like to say I used to bring the people to the toilets, and now I clean the toilets.
So was that hard for you?
Ooh, it was so hard. And I'll tell you what. So I live in a very small town, and there was nobody in our small town who had been terminated. So my kids were the only ones at school who had a parent who was taken out of workforce, who didn't have the income, who didn't have the insurance, who was so unsure of what was next. And my kids had to watch me walk through that in a small town. So that gave a face to the situation. But my kids grew a lot for having to see me get up every day and do the same thing and go after it. And now I'm happy where I'm at. I just don't want this to be the standard for our young generations. I don't want somebody to put my child on point and say, you have to do this, or your livelihood is taken. And I will be the voice to say, it's not going to happen.
It's a very brave thing to do, to stand up against the mandates and say, I'm not going to do this. And at the same time, there's many people whose pictures are inside this bus who've passed away or who've sat where you are, and they took it because they were going to lose their job, and they ended up losing their job anyways because they were injured. So in the end, you stood up for your children and did the right thing.
I think so.
Do you have any final thoughts before we get on?
I would just want everyone that hears this to really understand that there is such a motive, and the motive is not health derived. The motive is financial gain, and it puts everyone's physical needs down to nothing, like you matter nothing. It's all about financial gains, and they're going to gain off of your back and off of your injection.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.